Hey. Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Well, technically happy Saturday. Hope you all had a good week. Welcome back to Forever Conscious Research Channel. So, we're going to be going over Dianne Sherman's near-death experience. I have covered bits and pieces of it in the past, but but only segments. So I'm looking forward to kind of going through the whole thing because there is a lot in this one. And I mean, you can see the quote right there saying, how could you send me back? She said she felt punished and victimized after she got back, even though she says briefly, she kind of, she also discusses suffering. The memory wipe is also acknowledged. So there's just a lot in this one. And yeah, so let's get right into this one. And I think you're going to like this. Okay, so let's roll.
We live in a culture where it's been rubbed into us in every conceivable way that to die is a terrible thing. Alan Watts said that, and it's true. As a culture, we believe that death is the end of everything, that it's the scariest thing we'll ever experience while we're here in human form. And I guess if you don't hear anything from me, I want you to know that it's so magnificent on the other side. It's such a joy to be on the other side. And that from here, it's a graduation. It's not an ending. It's a continuation in your soul's evolution. It's a moving into new and more uplifting adventures. It's not a loss of anything. And your energy continues on. I know there are many religions that believe this is the end of the road, but I'm here to tell you it's not. I was raised a Catholic, 12 years of Catholic school, and they do not believe in reincarnation except for maybe Jesus Christ. So when I realized
Praise
what the
the
truth
Lord.
was on the other side, it made me rethink my religion and my interaction with it. And through these years, because I had my near death in 81, so I've had a long time to work this out. I'm a spiritual person. I am not a religious person. I'm pious in my beliefs, but I am not religious. And I found that religion for me, and I'm only speaking for me, was too limiting. It was too confining a box for me to be in. I no longer needed a priest to have a connection to God. I could go directly to the source, and I do constantly.
Okay, so right away we see a problem where she says, right away I can connect to source. I can connect right, got a direct line to God. So again, this is she's giving herself away to something exterior to herself who she believes to be God. And of course, that's motivated on her near-death experience, which is, we see that constantly, where they feel like they're dealing with God. When in this case, or source energy, whatever the term you want to use, pick the all-you-can-eat buffet of options. In her case, she ends up meeting with 2 monks. So let's keep going.
Constant contact and communication. And it serves me well. So we all have to find our way and what feels right to us. And I think the most important thing is to trust what you know and what you believe. Because nobody knows better for you than you. Not even me. So most of us, give our power away in certain ways to other people and circumstances. And I'd like you to remember never to do that, because you are your own God self and you do know better. So in 1981, I died in the hospital. I was going in for arthroscopic surgery. It was a very simple procedure. Nothing I was afraid of or worried about. Although that morning, while I was laying on the gurney waiting to go into the OR, I started racking with cold. And one of the nurses saw I was in distress, and she was kind enough to bring a warm blanket, and she put that on me, and that calmed my body down. And a little while later, I got rolled into the OR, and she put another warm blanket on me. And I was so relaxed that I just went to sleep. I went out before I'd even had I'd had a pre-op shot, but I'd had nothing else. And I just let go. And that was sort of, in the aftermath of everything, that was sort of telling for me to remember that part of it that I had already let go. So
Yes, and I like how she specifically brings that up, because what do we hear all the time in NDEs, or people, deathbed visions and visitations is another one, where we'll see them talk about how they have to let go. People who have breakthrough trips, and they're fighting it. Well, what do? They always say, hey, if I just let go, if I just submit or give in to the experience and don't fight the process, then it's just much easier. The more resistance they give, kind of the more pushback they get. Now, of course, that's a little more extreme because it's based with drugs. But with people with deathbed visions, visitations, a lot of times we'll see very similar circumstances where they, they're just fighting their last moments. And oftentimes that's because they have unfinished business, so to say, with their loved ones, or they need to resolve issues with friends, family, whoever. And they just want to see them one last time, and they're hoping that they get the phone call or the visit, and then boom, it's like they'll die that day. Soon as that business is done and they feel cleansed of that, they go. Well, the other side to that is that they always have visitors with them too. And those visitors are going to attempt to take the person with them to the other side. So just didn't want to deviate too much, but because she brings that up and then it's also discussed later on, it's a really important segment, again, because of the crossover, because of these data points, they cross over. That's how this whole damn thing comes together. It's like there's little bits and pieces and all these different experiencer accounts, and they create the whole very, very clear picture of the Matrix Reincarnation Soul Trap.
So I went through the surgery, and there was more damage than they had thought. And I was in there an hour and a half longer than I was supposed to be. And when I awakened in, I just lost the word. When I awakened in, thank you. It takes a village. When I awakened in the recovery room, I wasn't sure where I was and what I was seeing and all of that. And there was this kind of huge commotion in the bed next to me. Now, I regress here. I need to give you a little bit of backstory on that before I go there. So in 1981, before I had this surgery, I was going through a lot of trauma in my life. I was divorced. I had a 6-year-old daughter. The work that I had been doing for 15 years as a model, I was now way too old for it. And I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what the next step was. My parents were both dead. I was on my own. And I remember saying to God, okay, I need help here. I need some guidance. I really don't know what to do. I was overwhelmed being a single mom. I was overwhelmed being at the age that I was without a plan. I had missed so many steps in getting to this place. And I went into church, and it was almost like out of the Nun story. I don't know if you ever saw Audrey Hepburn's movie, The Nun Story, where she's like prostrate at the altar praying. And that's kind of how I felt when I was in there. I was just really begging and pleading, I need some guidance. I need some help.
Okay, so again, what do we see? A very common occurrence here on Earth, where we'll call out to God, call out to Jesus in our time of need. And, well, lo and behold, those things can come to fruition, especially in traumatic or very, very low moments in our lives. And it only takes one to win a person over for life. That's all it takes. You can have someone, buying into all the religious stuff, okay? But if they haven't really had something to back it up, but in their time of need, when they seriously need that, that's just going to push them over. That's going to win them over. Wrap it up. This incarnation is done. They got you for the next one. That's all it takes. It takes one little thing. to boost your morale, your confidence, to feed your belief system. And that's what the system's relying on. But remember, if you come here lifetime after lifetime with your memories erased, and we're under this assumption that this place is a learning experience, then how does that all make sense? It doesn't. We've all fallen for a scam. That's all. But that's over with. Enough.
So the answer to that is be careful what you ask for.
Yeah.
Because a few weeks later is when I had my surgery. So here I am in recovery, and I'm hearing all kinds of sounds and whatnot, and there seems to be a tremendous amount of commotion in the bed next to me. And I'm trying not to pay any attention because I really don't want to know what's going on over there, but my attention is drawn. And I hear them saying, Dianne, Dianne. And I'm thinking, isn't that weird that we have the same name? And they're still working on her. And the next thing I'm hearing them say, Dianne Sherman, Dianne Sherman. And I'm thinking, holy crap, that's my name. They've got the wrong patient. So I'm valiantly trying to get their attention. I'm here, and I'm fine. And they're not paying any attention to me. And I'm thinking, well, they're busy. They're working on this person. They're trying to save this person. So they don't hear me or see me. The next thing I know, I'm standing at the bottom of the patient's bed while they're working on her. There are several people on both sides working on her. And I look at her and I realize, whoa, that's me. And the interesting thing was, I didn't have any connection to her. She was me, but I didn't feel anything. It was like somebody said, pass the salt. I had nothing going on with this body in the bed and with what they were doing to her.
So, this is another common thing, right? Looking down or at the edge of the bed. Kind of, it's almost like a dissociative moment. But almost every NDEer they'll say that, they have their memories, they have their faculties with them, but it's like being ripped out of your body. It sends you into this different type of existence where certain things that we used to maybe hold dear or be attached to, connected to, either positive or negative, neutral, whatever, kind of flies out the window. It's just, it's like, there's Dianne.
And I didn't get nervous that, how am I standing here while I'm there? How's that working? Because I had no reference in 1981 for a near-death experience. I'd never heard of it. I'd never talked to anybody. I'd never read anything. Didn't know about Raymond Moody at that point. His book had only been out a couple of years. And I was just kind of like watching what was going on and watching what they were doing. And the sound was sort of not muffled, but muted in a way. So I wasn't caught up in the drama of life-saving work that they were doing. It was just like I was a passerby, kind of, just checking out what was going on. The next thing I knew, I had floated up to the corner. Now I'm looking over everything. And even that wasn't like, how did I get up here? There was none of that. It was just kind of, okay, I'm here and I'm experiencing this and whatnot. And before I knew it, I felt extricated. Something was pulling me out of the room. And then the next feeling was something shoving me. And, even when I say it right now, I can feel my shoulders kind of pushing, resisting that. And I started being shoved forward into blackness. Now,
Okay, so this is the all these NDEers will talk about how they felt like they were being pulled or pushed or drawn to something. Same thing here.
and I started being shoved forward.
So what would you do in this moment, right, with our knowledge about this topic and about proclaiming your sovereignty, liberating yourself? You would stop this immediately in its tracks. You would say, no, I am not consenting. I'm not involving myself. And then, everything we've discussed before, I'm not going to rehash it every single video, although I say it a lot, but there's no point to go over it every video. But it just know that you are the one in control, not this energy. Don't give into it. Stop it in its tracks. Don't let it get the upper hand on you. We can't allow that, because once you get to that light, it seems very, very difficult to get out of. It does. Just going to say it. So if you find yourself in that tunnel or the void, remember, the void-like state has to be of your own creation, not a matrix void. The matrix has a void too. And we don't want to be in something else's realm, especially something linked to this whole mess. No. So stand up for yourself. Sovereignty and liberation. You can do it. You're the one in control, nothing else.
Into blackness. Now, as a kid, I was terrified of being in the dark for various and sundry reasons. But one of them was, there was a thing about being blind, and I still to this day don't know where I got that. But the reference was that, oh my God, I'm blind. I can't see. My worst nightmare. I'm in the dark. And I'm thinking, if I can just see one speck of light, one little flicker of light, I know I'm going to be okay. Because that was always my reference as a kid. If there could be just a little bit of outside light coming in the room, I would be okay. It wouldn't be pitch black.
So you have to wonder with that kind of mindset, like just a little bit of light. It's interesting, right? How this correlates into her adult life when she has a near-death experience. And I would think that applies to many of us, right? I mean, the dark, the void, so to say, is demonized here. No sensory addictions. I mean, they want us to have those addictions so that we keep coming back and sticking to these attachments and this whole experience. That's what the whole system is designed for. So we got to shut that down again. Get used to minimal activity, very little, like almost no activity. And telepathically, audibly, verbally, whatever, visually, whatever. Okay, so kind of condense yourself down to that purest form of energy so that you can't fall into something again, like that you have, again, the upper hand. That's the most important thing, is to be able to control the scenario at your will, not something else that's trying to say, hey, hey, look here, and then fall for it over again. Because that's what we keep doing. We just keep falling for the same crap every life.
So I'm staring ahead and I see this little tiny, tiny, tiny glimmer of light. And I'm now fixated on it because it's the thing that's going to make this all okay, is if I have that to hold on to, that little bit of light, because I don't know where I'm going and what I'm doing. If it happened to me today, I would have had it handled. I would have known you're going in the tunnel. You know, we've read so much about it, heard so much about it, but I had no reference point. I didn't know what was occurring. I didn't know that I was dying or dead. All I knew is that I was in this place and I didn't know what to do about it. So I'm fixated on this glimmer of light. And
okay, so again, this is an important moment because she admits that she didn't know she was dead. And I think some of us kind of move through this a little quicker than others. I think it really depends on the mindset, the belief system, and probably a ton of other things that we can't even factor. And how clingy you are to this whole realm, to your body. Like if you're kind of obsessed, or not even obsessed, but just, I guess, curious, and putting that intention out there, like, well, you'll probably stick around a little bit longer on the earth plane, despite being separated from your body. But you're going to see some interesting things pop up soon in relation to her experience that kind of shows some reasoning as to why she feels this way, or why she kind of was in this state.
That I was in this place and I didn't know what to do about it. So I'm fixated on this glimmer of light, and as I'm staring at it and all of my attention is going there, it starts to grow. And as it's starting to grow, I know that whatever this is, it's okay. I'm going to be fine. And so I sort of just let the shoulders down, let the thoughts down, just had this sense of all rightness about it. And as I'm still being shoved, there's something now from this light pulling me, kind of coaching me and pulling me towards it.
Coaching me. I mean, that was a word she used. I mean, but she's also saying pulling. Coaching, you know, kind of like what she was saying earlier, pushing, kind of being pushed towards it, pulled towards it, just like all the other NDEers. But it's interesting that she uses this wordage, right? Because coaching is like, we can say, almost taunting, trying to get her to go along with it, to try and get her where it wants her to be, which is interacting with entities.
And as I'm getting closer, the light is getting brighter and bigger. And it was almost like in slow motion, I'm just sort of moving, gliding towards this light, towards this experience. And before I realized it, I'm now in the midst of it. It is everywhere. It's everything I can see and experience. It's everywhere. And I've said it, and I've heard other NDEers say it, the white light. It's not white. It's a color we don't have a name for. It's a color we don't have a reference for. It's a color that has more feeling to it than experiencing color. It has a luminescence to it that we don't have in third dimensional reality.
And many NDEers will kind of say that as well. Some will say it's a golden light, a blue light, white light, sometimes even bordering on like a rainbow color, with colors that can't be described. Like she's saying, hey, you know, yeah, I mean, people call it white, but you know, it's a color we don't really have here. doesn't matter. It's the same thing either way, and achieves the same objective, which is to overtake you with sensory overload, and just get those sensory perceptions running along there and falling for it. And it's like a drug. It really is. And I swear, once you're there, I think it's so difficult to bypass this stuff. So avoid the light at all costs. Again, you find yourself in that void, or even worse, going down that tunnel, shut it down. Shut it down. Control your own destiny.
There's nothing like it that we can see here in life. And it's brilliant. And the brilliance, you think of brilliant light, and it kind of makes you feel like that might be too much, that I need to put on dark glasses. As brilliant as this is, your eyes are fine with it. You don't have any response to it where, you want to shield yourself, because it's so brilliant. But it's so gentle. And I guess that's the dichotomy. It's so huge and magnificent and wondrous, and yet it's so gentle.
Doesn't it sound like a drug? Seriously, every time we listen to these things, it sounds like people are being drugged up by this light, by the whole system, because it knows it can win us over with something like love, because love is the positive emotion. It's the good emotion that we all appreciate here. I guess with the exception of a few out there, of course, but it's one of the best parts of being human, being able to have that emotion, that feeling. Imagine that multiplied or magnified 1,000 times, 10,000, 100,000, 1,000,000 times. And one of the examples that we talk about all the time, and she's going to go with this, she's going to say it, are the children. Okay, her kids. So buckle up, it's coming. And it's one of those examples that just shows you how powerful this thing is and just what we're dealing with.
And so loving. And that's the feeling. You're just stepping into this sense of unconditional love. And so from there, at the end of this beautiful, beautiful light, it starts to separate. And I'm now floating through the opening. And as I'm coming out the other end, there are 2 rows of beings in front of me, and they're dressed in monks' robes.
Dun, dun, dun.
Brown monks' robes. Now, lots of people have lots of different experiences, and I think it's always set up according to what would be analogous to them, what would be a comfort for them. And for me, being 12 years at Catholic school and all of that, monks were a very gentle part of all of that, more so than priests. And so here they were in monks' robes, brown monks' robes, with the hoods up. And they're facing like this as I'm going through the center of them.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt during this part, but I think it's important to bring up the belief-based system and how that plays such a massive role in all of this. And she readily admits it herself. Hey, monks were a positive thing for me. Priests, not so much, but monks, yeah. So that's something that gave her comfort. And well, what happened? The system delivered it, customized it to her, and gave the experience. So I'm just going to rewind just a little bit.
And so here they were in monks' robes, brown monks' robes, with the hoods up. And they're facing like this as I'm going through the center of them. And I'm just feeling this unconditional love radiating to me and through me and around me. It's like coming home. It's like coming home to a part of myself I didn't know I had. It's like coming home to myself in a way I had never experienced in life.
Okay, so again, we have the feeling of home. All the NDEers say this. It feels like I'm home. This is a false home that is based in euphoria. It's based in a system that is customizing an experience for you in an effort to win you over, to get you to agree. And you're going to see the manipulation up front and center coming soon.
Now, remember, I started out in trouble emotionally, not knowing where my life was going or what I was going to do. I was overwhelmed by life and terrified of making mistakes and, not having the tools and not having support and all of that. And here I am, absolutely enraptured. I felt feelings that I had never felt even as a child, as a newborn with my mother. I felt cherished in a deeper way than I knew you could experience. I felt like everything was right and all right, and that nothing mattered except being in the present of this experience and in this feeling.
Boom, boom, boom. Boom. Huge. Nothing else mattered except being in the presence of this experience. That's huge. Again, that shows the power that we're dealing with. That shows just how hard it is. And it's going to get worse.
I felt like everything was right and all right, and that nothing mattered except being in the present of this experience and in this feeling. Mm-hmm. And all of this information that came in this moment of being there, when you cross over, you're privy to all of the universal information. Mm-hmm. You might not retain it when you come back, but you are there in it in that moment.
You might not retain it when you come back. There's the memory wipe. Open admission.
To all of the universal information. You might not retain it when you come back, but you are there in it in that moment. You are connected to all there is and all that is.
You're connected to the matrix system. Not all. I really don't necessarily believe that. I think you might be connected within the huge matrix system that is trying to win you over. But I think there are other veils and blockades that exist to try and prevent us from truly opening ourselves up. But again, what happened early on in the experience, she decided to continue moving forward with it. She did not say, no, I do not consent. She actively used her intention to go along with it. And in turn, well, here she is. She's in the presence of this insanely powerful system, which is likely AI based. Highly likely. Probably about 99% likely.
And
with some entities running it, by the way.
That is. And I was so grateful to be there. And as I got closer to the front of this group of men, the one on the left stepped forward and he started to speak to me. And when I say speak, it wasn't articulation. It was as if we were speaking inside of each other. And there was no effort to it. It was just communication. It was just normal communication. And he stepped forward to me, and when I looked into his face, there wasn't one. The hood was empty. It was all energy. It was all black energy. But it wasn't scary. It was normal. It felt totally normal. I could feel him. I could experience him. And I say him because he had all of the wonderful masculine qualities of being in charge, taking care, protection, all of that, and love.
Okay, so boom, 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 boom. Being in charge. Being in charge. Remember, this is, again, this isn't a sovereign decision. This isn't liberation. This is bowing down to something that is, we are, or she is, not we, but she is perceiving to be God. This is a distraction, an attachment, something familiar. She feels like she's at home. And then it's also, there's a whole laundry list of other things. Love. Here, we'll go through it. Protection.
Him, I could experience him. And I say him because he had all of the wonderful masculine qualities of being in charge, taking care, protection, all of that, and love. And he said to me, and I want to say he looked at me and said to me, and he did. I mean, even though there were no eyes and no face, that was the sensation. And he said to me, "You cannot stay. It's not your time." And I said, "I just came home."
It's not your time. What are you doing here? See, this is what we're dealing with. She wants to stay. All these NDEers want to stay. And what do we see in near-death experiences? I didn't want to come back. Time and time and time again. I swear if I had unlimited funds, I would run all sorts of data polls to try and see exactly where that number stands, like on a massive scale. Same thing with pre-birth memories. What do they say? Time and time again. I didn't want to come. I didn't want to come back. I didn't want to go. Over and over and over and over and over and over and over again. So if God is this all loving being, if all these entities that are working at the behest of the system are all loving beings, then why does this whole thing continue to exist the way it does? There's nothing divine, there's nothing loving, there's nothing godly about what these entities or the perceived God being is doing in relation to this whole place. Nothing at all. Now there's a bunch of divine beings, creator beings here. Many good, some bad. But that doesn't mean anything because we're all in this together. We all came here. We all fell into this mess. And it is what it is, right? But that's it. This is the last time. Hashtag last timers, my friends.
I just found everything I had ever wanted in my whole life in connection. I've just experienced it. And he said, "It's not your time. You cannot stay." And this was the first time I started to get more human in that I started arguing with him and saying, You can't possibly send me back to a place that's so painful for me when I'm in so much bliss right now, right here with you. How can you possibly send me back?
How could you possibly send me back? It's a great question. It's a great question. How could you possibly send me back?
This right now, right here with you. How can you possibly send me back? And he said, You have a child.
So what do? They link into the child. Remember, we've seen, and I don't want to keep pausing it too much, but this has to be said because it's important. We've seen NDEs. There was one we saw where they went over 5 different people. Like they were going, it was like a computer freaking program. It was going through like mom, dad, 2 kids, grandma. And then it ended up being the mom in the end because mom was dying of cancer. And it's like, oh, what about your son? Oh, he'll be fine. Even though the child was like just born. It was like a newborn. And then the second one was like, oh, what about your daughter? Oh, she'll be fine. She'll be fine. What about my husband? Oh, he'll be fine. He'll be able to take care of the kids. You know, went down the whole list until five people back on Earth until it finally reached the last one, which was mom, who just so happened to be dying of cancer. And it's like, like, honestly, it makes you wonder, like, what happened there with the AI system, right? Like, did it screw up or something? Like, because it should have had the mom as the first selection, I'd imagine, but maybe it defaults to kids more often than not. I don't know, but it's really interesting stuff. So, and this is what we're seeing here, you know, like, she wants to stay. She doesn't want to go back. And the system, what? Throws the kids at her. Boom. You know, reel her in. Get that fishing pole ready.
And he said, you have a child. You cannot stay. You must go back. You have a child. Now, I love my daughter more than life itself, or so I thought. But in that moment, she was not a consideration in that very moment that I was fighting to stay. Now, in human form, I would lay down my life for her, but on the other side, I wasn't willing to give up that ecstasy and that bliss. And he kept repeating, you have a child. And
you have a child. What are you thinking? Why, excuse me, why are you even here? Dianne? Excuse me. I mean, seriously, where does this thing get off telling Dianne what to do? Where does this thing get off telling any of us what to do? Because of our attachments to this whole illusion, to our relationships. And just think about how it's so perfectly molded and set up in a way for you to fall right into that trap. All of us. We've all fallen into this. It's so easy once you get here. And just think, I don't even want to know how many lifetimes I've been here. I don't want to, well, I mean, I do want to know once I leave here, but I know there's been quite a few, let's put it that way. And it's just, it's a mess, man. This place needs to be exposed for what it is. And this information is so important. Please spread the word, my friends. Thank you.
And as he's saying that, I'm starting to think to myself, okay, who's going to take care of her and love her the way I want her to be cared for and loved? Now, I'm divorced for a reason, so her dad isn't going to be the answer. My parents are both gone. My sister had some emotional issues that didn't make her an appropriate choice. Friends that I had, were they close enough? Did I believe in their abilities? And the answer was no. And in that instant, I was back in my body.
She just laid it all out for us. Laid it all out. She's going down the list. Oh, my husband? No. I'm divorced for a reason. You know, sister, well, you know, she's not doing so well and may not be able to. And boom. You know, going down her list inside her head, which is directed by the system saying, what about your child? What about your child? And she's going through the process. Okay, eliminate. Oh, shit. I'm the only one. I'm the only one that could possibly take care of the system. My child. And what'd she say? Boom, right in the back, right back into the body. And how many times have we seen that? We've seen that, like, once the connection is made with the distraction the system presents, then boom, they're right back in their body. It's so common. It's in our face. It's just, you know, just hang in there with me. If you're new to the channel, just hang in there. I promise over time, this will totally click. Because, you know, it's one case after another, and all these different topics, not just near-death experiences, but just hang in there, hang in there.
thinking about my child brought me back into my body. So I don't know if it was my heart saying, I choose her, or if it was them saying, you're going back. And I'll never know the full answer to that.
She'll never know the full answer. I mean, I'm sorry to keep pausing this, but again, I told you when we started, there's so much here, so much. I'll never know the answer to that. So what do we have right here? The memory wipe, because she doesn't even know herself, admitting it to us. She doesn't know. And then it leads somewhere else too, which we've seen. I'll show you in a minute here.
And I'll never know the full answer to that. I hope it was because my heart chose her.
I hope it is.
But coming back was a shock. Coming back into a body that I no longer fit into, because I had become this expanded being. And now I was relegated to this human, tight-skinned being again.
Okay, but later on you're going to hear again, love and God, there's a plan. And just think about what she just mentioned. We've all gone through this. We've all gone through this. Think about it. You're this huge, expansive awareness. And then we're condensed into this meat suit. Limited perception, limited everything. But God loves us, right?
And it was hard squeezing back in. It was hard feeling all of these emotions. It was hard,
I bet.
All the anxiety and dialogues rushing back. We all have that mental chatter constantly. Well, on the other side, there's none of that.
Wrong.
So you come from...
Wrong. There is some sort of chatter because she allowed it. No offense, Diane. Again, if you're listening, Diane, I don't mean any harm. I'm just decoding and going through your experience, your testimony, and I never want to hurt anyone. But it's clear that something exterior to her helped her think a certain way, transmitted a certain message or a certain algorithm. She started thinking of it, setting her intention on it, and then a result happened. Yeah, different form, but still, it's chatter. And it's something exterior to ourselves taking control when it has no business doing so.
That. So you come from peace and quiet and love to, being a human being in all of its foibles. And it's devastating. And it took me a long time to figure out, what the gifts were in all of that. I felt very punished at one point. I felt victimized because I had been sent back. So I thought. And it took time to process what I had experienced and what I was supposed to do with it. I didn't really have people to talk to about it. Who would understand? Couldn't go to my priest. I couldn't tell my doctor. They would have thought I was certifiable. But I did heal really quickly from my surgery. I was up walking that night without medication. The lady that was in the bed next to me, she'd had arthroscopic surgery also and had far less repair than I had. And she was in really amazing pain. And she was in the hospital longer than I was. I left the next morning. I was on crutches. I was good to go.
He was good to go. There is a healing component to some of these experiencers. Some of them are just totally wild. But, she said herself, I had the surgery. The lady next to me had the same surgery and less invasive. And she was in worse shape than Diane was. Well, Diane interacted with entities who helped heal her. probably part of the deal for her to come back. I'm guessing. This is just opinion here. I'm not saying it's definitely true, but if you think about it, she didn't want to come back. She came back, but maybe she made a deal. Maybe she cut a deal. Kind of like Harold cut a deal. Harold's in the chat tonight. Harold cut a deal to get certain memories of his pre-birth existence, his pre-birth experience. And in turn, the entity said, oh, well, we're going to make life a little harder for you. So it was a little trade-off. Just saying. I mean, who knows? The healing modalities, we see this constantly with NDEs. I mean, not like on a huge level of the case studies that we've gone over here, but enough where people have these, you can call them miraculous healings or whatever the case. And I mean, we've seen people who have the most insane injuries and they're walking out of the hospital the next day after they get back, and they're defying modern day science through all sorts of testing, and they're checking out against doctors' advice and wishes and going and doing their thing, and they're just fine. And then you have a whole another subset who maybe didn't have an NDE, or if they did, maybe they weren't quote unquote worthy of a healing experience. Just saying, something to think about.
And the doctor said he'd never seen anybody heal like that.
See, the doctor said he's never seen anybody heal like that.
So that was the gift in being on the other side, is that it helped my body heal. What was hard to heal was my heart. I had a broken heart coming back because I wanted to be where I felt loved. I wanted to be where I felt taken care of and cherished. I didn't want to have to be here and stumble and fumble anymore. So imagine
I didn't want to be here and stumble and fumble anymore. Her words, not mine.
I wanted to be where I felt taken care of and cherished. I didn't want to have to be here and stumble and fumble anymore. So imagine my poor child, God love her, growing up with a mother who had wished she'd stayed on the other side instead of being back here. It wasn't something that I talked about or verbalized a lot, but she could feel it. And that must have been pretty tough for her. But as I've learned, the processes that we have are all appropriate. And she chose me for the processes I would put her through, as I did with my mother and dad. So I said to God, okay, you've given me this experience. Now I have some demands, and the demands are, I need to find ways to be able to connect on that level, to have some of those feelings again. Otherwise, I will not stay in this body. And so I was led to different people who were amazing teachers for me. They taught me how to meditate. They taught me how to go out of body again. They taught me how to connect up again. And for small bits of time, I could have blissful states. And every time I'm able to go to that place, it makes me sob because it's so humbling to have that sense of love coming to me, radiating to me. Because I think...
Well, what was her words right there? That love radiating to me. It continues the process, right? Continues, she's here giving a lecture. Her face, her name, her story is out there. Perhaps the Matrix marketing department had something to do with it. Just saying. We've seen other examples of this. Not saying that this is the case specifically with her, but can't rule it out either.
I think for most of us, we spend a lot of our life not feeling loved, and certainly not feeling loved on that level. And when you're able to, touch in and have that, it's such a gift. So I guess the point of my whole experience has been that I needed to die to get a life, to understand how life works, because I didn't have a handle on it. I thought that life was happening to me. I thought that everything that was going wrong or not going right was because of God was doing it to me, life was doing it to me. I hadn't a clue that I had any power in all of that. I didn't know that we are an extension of God. I grew up believing and being taught that we are created in the image and likeness of God. Well, I'm here to tell you it's a hell of a lot bigger than that. We are an extension of the God source here on earth. We were created so that the Creator could experience everything that we experience.
Okay. So this is a common New Age line. We've heard other NDEers say it. Actually, some who weren't even necessarily involved with New Age. And I'm not saying Dianne is or isn't, but I think the whole New Age arena is put in place for a reason. It's like, oh, well, it's kind of like your last resort. One of the last resorts of religion, where they give you some truth, just like all the other religions. They give you a little truth and pepper it with a bunch of bull. And it's this whole narrative that we're helping Source or God or the Creator experience life through us. It kind of gives you that ego boost, right? That's an ego pleaser phrase. No, I don't need to please anybody. I don't. Nobody needs to please anybody. If we've learned anything about this experience, is that this whole thing is an individual journey. Now, what happens when we leave here and we connect with our true selves 100% and we're not interfered with, and what we learn or what we have learned prior to that and all that comes flooding in, well, we'll take that into account when we get there. But until then, there's no point in risking any of this stuff. I don't even know what to think about the whole God Creator thing. I really don't. But it seems to make sense that there's a creator. But again, this is a limited perception that I have within me. And I really have no right to say either way. Just because something feels right doesn't make it so. Just because in the past, there's things I've said, oh, I resonate with that so hardcore. It's the truth. And then you revisit the topic a year or so later, and what do you know? You fell right into a psyop. Something that you were convinced, absolutely convinced with every fiber of your being was true. And it was a lie. Probably, and it could be a massive lie. There's been a few of those in my life. So I the whole thing, take what resonates and leave the rest. Yeah, I mean, that's true to an extent, but don't take it as gospel either. Like, just saying. That's not to say that, you should go against your intuition or things like that, because most of the time your intuition is going to treat you well. But it's whatever things you really, really sign on to, double check, move on, go back and revisit it. Move on, go back and revisit it. Like, I'm talking about like the top tier stuff in your life that really, really connects with you. Those are the ones, like, if they're such hardened beliefs or feelings, or they resonate, well, then you should be able to put them to the test again later on, and continue to prove those things. Continue to feel and know that you are confident in your assessment of what that specific thing is. Like, let's just say the soul trap. That's it. So
everything that we experience, we were created out of love.
oh, come on.
And the Creator's always got our back. Spirit's always got our back. And all is well, no matter what it looks like. All is well.
No matter what it looks like. Well, all is good because, you know, we're eternal beings. So yeah, technically everything is all good, but God, you know, Spirit, Creator, God has your back no matter what. No, I'm sorry, Dianne. That's just not happening here. It happened in your experience, Dianne, because you felt that way. And again, I mean no harm, Dianne. It's just, you know, we're coming at this from two very different perspectives. But I respect you, and I understand why you're doing what you're doing and sharing your story, and I appreciate that.
Our back. Spirit's always got our back. And all is well, no matter what it looks like.
No matter what.
All is well. And that's the part that we don't quite get. Because the mind is always telling us, the ego is always telling us, you're not good enough, you're not big enough, you don't know enough, you can never handle that. Because the ego is trying to protect us. What we don't realize is that the ego feels insecure continuously because the ego has no connection to God, to Source, to love. And so it's always coming from anxiety and fear. And it's radiating in the dialogue we hear. And our job is to stop listening to that litany of junk that it's spewing at us because it's not the truth of who we are.
Okay, if it's not the truth of who we are, Dianne, then who fell asleep at the switch creating this meat suit? Who fell asleep at the switch? Who continues to allow genocide and rape and murder and famine and all this other stuff? If it's all love, and I you know, I don't want to hear the whole, oh, it's an illusion. Yeah, okay, it's an illusion. Yeah, we all acknowledge that, but that doesn't take away from the here and now, right? What are we in? We're in the here and now. We're in the moment. And in the moment, right here, right now, I have a human body. You all have a human body. And we experience this right now. We're not talking about later. We're talking about now, because the only time is now. Time is time, you know, whatever you want to make of time. You see, it falls apart. The whole thing falls apart so easily. Not her story, but the whole narrative that we keep seeing over and over in all these near-death experiences and all of the other topics that we go over.
We are these perfect children of God.
Oh, come on.
We are here to have fun. We are here to grow and expand and have amazing experiences. We're not here to suffer, which was my assumption. I thought we were here to suffer, that it was painful here. It was always going to be painful here.
That was her assumption. And what changed that? Her near-death experience. And just like AAA said, wheelchair-bound vegetable children. Well, what about them? Not here to suffer? What about the children and the adults who go through torturous cancer? What about all those things? It's so easy to just paint the wide brush on the whole world based on a given experience. I mean, yeah, I understand, Dianne, it was an amazing experience for you, and it was great, but, you know, we can't, it's so easy to brush over the atrocities that occur here. It really is, and it just has to be put in perspective. People are homeless right now in the street, cold, or too hot, or starving, or not getting enough water, or their water's, you know, filled with bacteria and they're sick. Any endless amount of options. There's so many different things going on. And that is not love. And Diane, if you're listening to this, or anyone out there who's had an NDE, think about it this way. If you have children, if everything's about love, would you be willing to take your children and say, okay, I just as an experiment, I disown you, just say for 2 weeks or a week or even a day. I disown you, my loving son, my loving daughter, but I'm going to throw you in the middle of the streets of North Korea for a day, just one day. I'll drop you off, and then I will come back 24 hours. You see what happens, right? I mean, would that be a loving scenario? To put them at the mercy of North Korea or whatever tyrannical government exists, or whatever situation exists, like a homeless strip or something like that. I mean, and or a drug den, or I mean, seriously, there's so many different, or a shack in India, with no plumbing, barely, maybe one meal a day, and it's barely anything. See, this is the problem. Like, it's so easy for us to simplify these things, but we have to come back down to what is and what's going on here, and not discount the other side of the spectrum. It's easy for us to say, oh, well, hey, I'm sitting in electricity, I've got air conditioning, I've got heat, I've got a fridge with food, I've got water, I got a toilet, I got a bed, I got a car. These are all things that we take for granted, but there are plenty of people out there who don't have that. And there are plenty of people out there who are suffering beyond words. What about trafficking? What about war? We already talked about war, but you get my point. It's like we can't just throw all this stuff aside and no big deal. We can't. If love is truly the answer, if we're truly connected to all this, then why do we come here lifetime after lifetime with our memories erased? Why is suffering on such a massive scale? This isn't like small scale suffering. This is widespread. Why is inflation running rampant and decimating the middle class? At least here in America. What about the rest of the world? Imagine living somewhere else on an even more limited income. And depending on where you live right now, you could be paying $8-9 a gallon for gas. Some places maybe even 10. Just to get to your job. That's what? Paying you $15 an hour, $20 an hour, maybe less, maybe $13, $10 an hour, depending on where you're at. Maybe you're in a factory in China, sweatshop in China. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't want to keep going on about this, but it's I've been saying it to make a point that it's so easy to simplify things and just kind of cloak it up as love. We're all connected and it's all about love and it's got our best interests at heart, when it's anything further from the truth. So
it doesn't matter what it looks like. What matters is, how do you perceive it? I have a grandson who was diagnosed with autism when he was 2. He's now almost 6. And he's a beautiful little boy. He's an unusually beautiful little boy. And that's part of it. He's got this incredible facade going. And yet he lost all of his words. And he taught us to communicate in a different way. He taught us to pay attention to him in a different way. Now, my daughter has done an amazing job with him, and this little boy is now in kindergarten, a regular kindergarten, and he's doing fine. But he was a teacher for us, and we knew that. At least I knew it from the get-go. He opened our hearts. He opened our minds. and he took us for a ride with him.
Oh, we're taking for a ride.
And this is the same as every experience in life. Everything that happens to us, there's a gift in it.
And, we've all been taken for a ride, but Diana's talking about her own family, all right? And can't even talk about it, okay? All right. If you do your research on that specific topic diligently, you'll come up with the solution. And it's sad, really sad. And it links into what's going on now, last few years. Just saying.
And if we can't imagine what it could be, you've heard many people who've had cancer talk about what a gift it was for them, because they learned about loving themselves. They learned about opening their hearts and allowing people to do for them. They learned to receive instead of giving themselves away. So it's really important to know that everything that we can experience in life comes from our perception of what is coming. If you believe that everything's on your side, it's like we were talking last night in the car, getting a parking place and parking karma. I know that I'm always going to have a parking space, even if I can't see it ahead of me. I know it's going to show up, and I know it's going to be not only a nice parking space, it's going to be the parking space. It's going to be right where I need it to be. And
yeah, because you're just going to keep looking until you get the best one available. That's just the way it is. All right. You're not going to get the, if you think about the Seinfeld episode, you ever see the one where, I don't know, they go like shopping for a gift. I think Kramer's driving and he pulls into the handicap spot. Oh, we'll just be a minute. And then they go in and I think they get a TV or something, this big screen TV, I think for this couple's wedding or engagement party or something. And then like everyone and their brother came out to shit on Kramer's car and destroy it because he parked in the handicap spot because a person with a wheelchair couldn't get in and ended up hurting themselves or something. I mean, you see what I mean? It's like we're the parking space you're going to get is the one you're going to get. That's it. I mean, it's not going to just magically open up and be the best parking space ever. It's just going to be the parking space that you happen to get to. That's it. That's it. There's nothing spiritual or amazing about it. It's just, it is what it is.
It is.
Exactly. Thank
Always.
You, Diane.
And it is.
It is, yes.
Always. I've let go of thinking about it. It's a knowing, and that's the trick. It's knowing that somebody's there taking your hand and making it all okay. And when you adopt that, when you choose to believe that you are unconditionally loved, magic starts showing up in all kinds of places you can't imagine.
Snap.
And I think it's a question of, can we trust ourselves to love ourselves enough to believe that we deserve that kind of a life? Is that a leap for most of you, or are you on board with some of that? Can we see? Can I see some hands? Yay, I'm in the right group. Well, then you know what I'm talking about. You know it's a matter of stepping forward and being on board with all this. I wake up every morning and I'm in gratitude for whatever happens to pop into my mind. Sometimes it's just the feeling of my sheets because they're so yummy and my bed feels so supportive and so good, and I luxuriate in that feeling. And maybe it was the night's sleep that I had, or the dreams that I had, or the fact that I feel at peace and rested within myself. I'm in gratitude for that. And then I think about, okay, what am I going to look forward to today? What's on top today? And I think to myself, I wonder what amazing people I get to meet today, that I get to work with, that I get to see. I wonder what gifts are coming to me today that I'm just going to relish, and it's all going to feel yummy. And I just go through this list within myself, and I'm putting it out there. I'm letting the universe know, okay, this is my list for today, and this is how I'm going to bring it in, because I'm trusting that you love me enough that I deserve to have that.
Okay. All right. I'm loving enough to myself that I got to take a 5-minute break. So I'll see you in a moment, my friends. We still got ways to go. There's a lot more interesting things to come. And if you've enjoyed this so far, please consider hitting the like button. I'll see you back here in a little under 5 minutes. Hang tight. Thank you so much. Hey. Thank you for your patience. And let's get back into it. We've got about another 22 minutes to go, of course. And that's without commentary, so let's roll. Oh, by the way, I just want to say really quickly, I do have 2 YouTube backup channels, a Twitch where I play games, Odyssey, I don't know, a bunch of other things. Check the description if you want to join and find me on other platforms, Instagram, Twitter, blah, blah, blah. And there's also a Discord server. And if you'd like to join us for a voice chat after the show later on, feel free to check the description tab for that as well.
We don't have to prove ourselves to be loved by God. That came with our creation. You don't have to be anything but what you are. Because what I learned on the other side is there is no judgment on us. None. Zip. Nada.
Well, other NDEs kind of imply the opposite. Not saying all. But you hear a lot of NDEers say, yeah, no, it's self-judgment. It's yeah, there's judgment, but it's not really judgment because you're judging yourself and blah, blah. Well, what's causing that judgment? If there wasn't this interception from the light or entities with the ability to produce a certain narrative and experience for us, just saying, that's what's happening. So why can't we just be left alone? Why do we have to play this game like we have to answer to something higher than us that we know nothing about? Nothing.
We have to stop judging ourselves, because if God isn't judging us, what are we doing judging ourselves as harshly as we do by listening to that stuff in our heads? There's nothing to be afraid of in dying. It means that you've lived and you're ready for the next adventure. It doesn't mean you're finished. It just means this vehicle that we are in is let go of. If you've ever been at the bedside of someone who has let go, who's transitioned, you can feel the energy in the room when they come out of the physical form. It's just incredible. It fills up the whole room. It's very uplifting, and it's very loving, and it's very gentle. I've been with numerous people in different forms of transition, and I've watched people suffer and fight against it and rail against it. And the most wonderful thing we can do is love ourselves through it. Trust and love ourselves that we are cared for, and you will
trust. Just trust. It's like that word faith. Submit. Give yourself up to just have faith that God loves you. That's all you need. That's all the system wants, is for us to have faith in it. That means belief. That means not knowing. That means hoping that what is represented here and in NDEs and all these other experiences are on the up and up. And that, yes, God does in fact love us. The Creator does in fact love us. Well, sure is MIA. It sure is MIA. Seriously. Come on. It's just common sense here. We're borderline abandoned by any sort of divine thing while we're here. You may get a few bones and tokens thrown at you once in a while, but what does that do? That's all in an effort to win you over, to get you to sign on to the next life and just go along with the show. Buy into the illusion.
Pop right out. You stand in fear, you stand in worry, you stand in judgment on yourself, and it's going to be painful. And there's no reason for that. We should go joyfully, you know?
Go joyfully. Go joyfully to the light. Go joyfully and just hang out with something you know nothing about. That's telling you that it's God or divine or the creator or source, whatever. Just go along with it. And in some aspects, yes, she's right, obviously, that, you don't want to go either direction, though. You want to stay neutral and worry about yourself. You don't want to go too far to the loving. You don't want to go too far to the negative town. Because remember, we still have to live here day to day, right? You want to try and stay in the center as best you can.
As the creator of Apple said, wow, Steve Jobs, wow, be in awe of it because it is awesome. It's amazing. So my job now, coming back with what my guides call clear sight, is probably one of my favorite gifts of having the experience of being on the other side. And that is, I get to see all of you in your essence. I don't see your facades. I see the essence of who you are. I see your hearts in your faces. I see the beloved in you. I see the preciousness in you. And it's a reminder of who you really are, not who you tell yourself you are in your head. It's a reminder of the energy, the divinity that you carry, the light that you carry here on the planet, that you share with people every day. And it's about really owning that part of yourself, because that is the biggest part of you. It doesn't matter how successful you've been, how much money you've made, how many kids you've had, what kind of a name you've made for yourself. What matters is, did I touch people? Did I allow them to touch me? Was I living a life of emotional well-being? Was I celebrating myself? Was I proud of me? None of us get enough kudos in life. From our parents, none of us got loved the way we wanted to be loved. And that's the way it was set up. But we have the ability to love ourselves and make up the difference.
And that's the way it was set up. Yeah, it's set up in a way to kind of tease you with the love that you get while you're here. And, that love can be amazing. It could be great. But then, what do you get when you leave here? Just an explosion of love that is irresistible. That's the problem with all this stuff, is that it's an irresistible love we know nothing about. But it's God. It's divine. It's God.
And that's part of what our job is,
It loves
to be
us.
the highest vision of ourselves that we can be. Imagine what the world would be like if we were carrying that energy, as opposed to the insecure little people that we become. There wouldn't be wars. There wouldn't be people living without basic necessities. There wouldn't be strife.
All right, but I think if you polled the bulk of humanity on the earth today, Dianne, and asked them, do you want war? Do you want famine? Do you want misery? Do you want suffering? I think the bulk of society would say no. Well, what do we have historic records for? As far back as we can go. This is in my the channel trailer video where I talk about how this goes. What's going on today is our modern day version of the same thing that's been going on forever. And that's all we have records for. Who knows what records have been destroyed, what we're missing. for the history that's going on here. The bulk of humanity would certainly not want suffering, but it's not possible for us to take control of it and change things on a mass scale. It's just not going to happen. The system is set up by design on purpose to be this way. And that's just the hard truth. Remember, investigating reality and hard truths, the spiritual perspective, the sovereign perspective. That's the hard part of all this.
Basic necessities, there wouldn't be strife. There would be love. There would be support. There would be passion in a good way. And that's what we're working towards, isn't it? To be the best and highest form of ourselves. Yeah? That's always my prayer. Let me be the best of myself. Marianne Williamson did a wonderful prayer, and she talks about in her prayer that we're afraid to let our light shine for fear that it will upset other people. And the fact is when we do let our light shine, it reminds everybody else to do the same thing. To be as big as you can muster.
Oh, you mean Marianne Wilson, who is is a system asset? Who's a politician? Who, when I go to the bookstore, there's about, 8, 9 different books by her, all in the New Age section. Again, I'm sorry, but she ran for office too. She was like the equalizer candidate, just like Tulsi Gabbard was. They're all the same. They're just props of the system. That's not a very good endorsement. I'm sorry. It's just, if you make it onto the debate stage or into the running of politics for president, that's because you've been allowed to. That's because you're sanctioned to do so. And the system is letting it happen now. Could there be some anomalies here and there? Yeah, but you're not going to get anywhere. You're never going to get the nomination. You're never going to get enough electoral college votes or anything like that. Everything's set up in a way for whoever they want to win will win. Doesn't matter who you are. Republican, Democrat, makes no difference. All sides of the same coin. Yeah, she did run for office.
Because we deserve that, right? So I work with people to help them heal their hearts. I work with people not to be afraid of life or death, because they're both wonderful experiences that we agreed to have. I'm here to help people become the best of themselves, to step through the blocks that are holding them back, to know who they are, to have a sense of themselves in a different way. And I'm always grateful and in gratitude when I'm able to communicate and connect with somebody on that level, because it's a gift to me. Because whenever anybody gets healed, because I do vibrational healing too, whenever anybody gets healed in any way, there's always a healing for me. And having been on the other side, I'm a junkie for all things spiritual. Any interaction that I can have that uplifts me even more, I'm right there with it.
When I heard Dianne say this, Dan, if you ever run across my videos, let's talk. You're a junkie for anything spiritual. Let's talk. If you're open to things and really want to hear an alternative view, I am always willing to talk. And you're more than welcome to come on anytime.
I can have that uplifts me even more. I'm right there with it. So I wanted to share with you a couple of things. Elizabeth, we had talked about spirit stories and stuff like that. Okay. Trying to think who you need to hear first. I never know until I get someplace what spirit is asking me to do. All right, I'll give you this one.
What spirit is asking me to do? This is Dianne being instructed by spirit, by God, by the creator, by source. So an exterior being to her is giving her instructions, and she's taking them. She doesn't know who this being is. This is where the problem comes in.
Get someplace what spirit is asking me to do. All right, I'll give you this one. My husband had decided that he wanted to have a second house in the desert, down in Palm Desert. And I started to get really, you'll excuse the expression, pissed off at the idea of having it. And I had no idea why I was feeling this way. It was just this internal nodding up inside of me that said, I don't want to do that. And he said, well, why wouldn't you want to have a vacation house? What's wrong? Well, let's go down this weekend and we'll see what's available and blah, blah, blah. And I was so resistant. I mean, my heels were really dug in. And I had been working with this woman, Linda Kegel, and she was amazing in helping me move forward through my experiences. And we started to do a meditation together. And the next thing I know, I am now full-on body channeling, and his name is Joseph.
Well, how about that? How about that? You know, she was going through a rough patch, trying to get through things in relation to her experience, from what I can tell. Meets up with a person conveniently ready and waiting, and all of a sudden she's channeling. Again, exterior forces, you know, inserting itself where it has no business and cloaking itself as something divine or godly.
And we started to do a meditation together. And the next thing I know, I am now full-on body channeling, and his name is Joseph. I had never channeled before.
No, thank you, Joseph. We'll pass.
I'm channeling Joseph. He's a young man, probably 18. And his story is that he lived in the desert centuries ago, and his family was decimated. They were slaughtered in the desert by these soldiers. And he had been away from where their campsite was or whatever it was, doing something else. And so he wasn't hurt. He could stay away watching what was going on. And he had to find another group of, I don't want to say Bedouins, I'm not sure what they were, that he lived with, because they killed everybody in his group. And the basic part of the story is that Joseph was terrified of the desert because of the soldiers. And all I remembered is that I was terrified of the desert. My middle name is Josephine, and that was a past life of mine. And so when the house idea came up, I was terrified and angry because it was death for me. But I had no idea why until I had that past life memory come through and channel his information.
And channel his information. Again, more exterior sources. And channeling, nonetheless. A lot of you know my thoughts on channeling. I'm not down with channeling at all. That's why it's not a data point. Are there some hints in there once in a while? Yeah, there are. But mostly in the very negative side. And there's so many hucksters in the whole channeling thing that I don't trust any of it. Any of it. I mean, again, that doesn't mean you're not going to get information out of it. But the problem is, who do you trust? Just because of how saturated. Same thing with remote viewing. Remote viewing's same exact thing. There's all this, remote viewers are like put on a pedestal. Meanwhile, it comes straight out of the freaking government. Come on. We got to stop relying on like this half-assed information. I mean, it means you're allowing an entity to come in and impact you and insert a thought into you. And then it feels like fact because there's like a whole spiritual connection with it and everything. No, it's too far out there, and not too far out there, but it shows entity interference constantly.
And it just goes to show you how connected we are through all time frames and realities. It doesn't end here. I've had many past life experiences, and everything we say or do affects everybody else in the world. It's like throwing a pebble into water. The ripples just go out and we don't realize it. We're that powerful and that synergistically connected because we all come from one place, the source.
Yeah, we all are very powerful. That's for certain. We're all creator beings with massive abilities that can't even be put into words or perceived properly while in this body. We are so powerful, and that's where sovereignty and liberation comes in at the time of natural death. And right now, living it day to day, asserting yourself, standing up for yourself, and doing the small things now. That's why learning all this information is so important. Sticking with it and connecting with it, doing your own research. Remember, the channel here should only be a stepping stone for you to do your own research. But if you're new, just hang in there. I promise if you give yourself a year or two kind of diving through this stuff and don't get too distracted by all the other bull out there, you'll see it. It just takes a little while. I promise you. Just hang in there, do your own research, check out Wayne Bush at trickedbythelight.com and Dan at Overwatch Project and Overwatch channel, and do streams every weekend here as well.
So I went to visit my best friend in England, and I was staying in her guest room. And this is a 14th century house. It was originally a pig farm, but it was a huge 10,000 square foot house. And I'm listening to this sound, creaking sound, and I'm thinking, and I looked over, and the rocker in the corner, she had a rocker by the fireplace, is moving. And so at breakfast, when I went downstairs, I said, Tina, have you had company in this room before? Have you had experiences with the room? And she said, oh yeah, all the time, that rocking chair and the noise, and sometimes we hear walking. And I said, do you mind if I take a crack at it? Because, you don't know what you don't know until you try. So I just had this hit from spirit that I could work with it. So I went into meditation and I contacted the spirit that was in the room. And she had been stuck a long time. She'd been dead 20 years. And I said to her, what is happening? Why are you here? And she said, I don't want to leave because if I leave, I'll never see him again. And I said, see who? And she said, he was the love of my life, but my parents wouldn't let me marry him. And she said, if I leave here, I'll never have another opportunity to see him. Now, she at that time was probably 75 or 80. So she'd been waiting a long time. She'd been married, she'd had children, her husband had passed away. And I said, if you saw him, would you be willing to go to the light, to transition? And she said, if I got to see him.
Well, I am going to make that happen. See? I mean, such a slippery slope. And the blind trust and belief and faith that is given to the light because of all these experiences happening over and over and over, it creates this echo chamber of buying into it, no questions asked, giving away the sovereignty of ourselves. No, no, no.
So I asked for him to come forward. And he stepped forward to her. Now, he was a young man. She was still in her age of 75 or 80 because she hadn't crossed over yet. He was back in his young man form. And it was like they had never been apart when they got together. It was incredible. I had never experienced such love between two people. And he escorted her off. He took her to the other side.
Of course he did. Of course he did. We see this constantly. Deathbed visions and visitations. This is all part of the soul trap. All of it. The deathbed visions and visitations are a huge part of this because there's so many stories, so many experiences of people who are dying, and then you have family members next to them. Sometimes they even have a shared death experience on top of it. And the person who is dying says they are being told by a loved one or whoever, or Jesus or Buddha or Muhammad, or someone's hanging out, getting in their dreams. It kind of starts off with dreams, like premonition dreams. And then it kind of eases its way into reality, but they're the most real experiences ever. And then sometimes you'll have the person who's dying on their deathbed hamming it up, having a full-on conversation, like looking in a corner, looking at the end of the bed, or looking to the side, and the being's right there, and they're having a full-fledged conversation. And what does that conversation consist of? Your time's almost up. The clock is ticking. You got to come with us. You're going to have to come with us soon. You know, it might not be this second, but we're getting close. So it's like a primer to get people so that when they pass, that they're immediately given their sovereignty up. So they're not even thinking about it. And then sometimes, like I said, the family member's sitting there and they see this going on. They can't necessarily always visualize what they are seeing, the person dying. But it's a very in-depth conversation, sometimes even with the people that they know. Like, say you have a daughter on her mother's deathbed and dad is coming to bring her to the light. Pick the scenario. Doesn't matter. It's set up in a way for you to give your sovereignty away right then and there before you've even crossed. This is what we're dealing with. This is how diabolical this whole thing is.
Before she left, she said, "Tell your friend that her garden is so beautiful." Now, my friend Tina had worked diligently. She was an interior designer. She is an interior designer. And she had worked very hard in her English garden. And it's a showpiece. And they would do charity fundraising things at her house because it was so beautiful. And I love that her parting shot to me was, "Tell your friend that her garden is really lovely." And that was a lovely way for me to be able to say to Tina, she was watching, she was paying attention. She appreciated what you had done with her home. So, we are connected on so many levels. It never ends. Do you want another one? Okay. I worked with a group in Los Angeles called the Messengers of Light. And we all had psychic abilities of different forms. And
What a surprise. What a surprise. Listen,
I worked with a group in Los Angeles called the Messengers of Light.
The Messengers of Light. They all work together. What was she trying to do? Help other people get to the light. And, channeled messages and all this stuff. And this is all coming again exterior.
light. And we all had psychic abilities of different forms. And our teacher was from Brazil, Fatima Castro, and she was an amazing woman. She spoke Portuguese, and she had a translator. And we would be in classes with her for hours on end. And she would be speaking, and simultaneously he would be translating. And that's how we learned. And it's funny because we always watched her, but we only heard his voice. We never heard her Portuguese. And she had asked us to work with people who had died in unusual circumstances, people who had been murdered, people who had had accidental deaths, and people who had committed suicide. And her daughter's best friend had just graduated from dental school in Brazil. And she had been out celebrating with her family the night of graduation, and they were in a cafe. And some guy came in.
Wait till you hear this.
I'm sure he was drugged up. And he had a gun and, wheeling it around, and people tried to...
It was a love gun, though, guys.
Calm him down, and the gun went off, and it shot this young woman in the back of the neck, the base of the skull, and killed her.
But remember, God loves us.
But she was stuck in the in-between because she was so shocked that this had happened. She'd just graduated. She'd worked so hard to get to this place, and now she was dead. And she couldn't understand why this would happen. How could this happen? How could this be my life? How could this be the end of my life? She was so upset about it that she couldn't let go and go on. So Fatima asked us to work with her because she was too close to her. She wanted us to do it. And each one of us had different abilities, and some of us would process her emotions, and others would do psychological work with her, and some were physical channels. And we're sitting in a circle, and I happened to look up, and my friend Alice was sitting right across from me, and I think there were 12 of us at the time, 10 or 12 of us.
12.
And I had been in deep meditation, processing with this young woman. And for some reason, I opened my eyes. And when I opened my eyes, Alice came flying out of her chair into the center of our circle. And when I say flying, the legs were straight out in front of her. She didn't propel herself. Her legs weren't on the ground. Her legs were up. And she flew physically into the circle of all of us. And I was just shocked. I had no reference for what was happening. She was a physical channel. She took the bullet in the back of the neck, and it shot her out of the chair when she experienced that. Because she was processing that for the young woman who had died.
I don't even... It's like... I mean, just think about the story leading up to this. And then you have like a whole team ready and waiting to help someone cross over. And Dianne put it perfectly, like saying, she just worked up and did all her schooling and built up herself to be set up for a good career and a good life. And then boom, everything's just shot down. No pun intended, but it's sad. It's really sad. And it's just amazing to me that Dianne can experience something like this, and other NDEers can be in similar scenarios and not see the contradiction to what their message is versus the real world of what's actually happening here, and just kind of wash it away as if it's nothing and explain it away. I don't even know what to say. I don't think I need to say anything else. You get you get the point.
I didn't know things like that could occur.
I didn't know cognitive dissonance can exist like this. Well, I did, but.
And it was thrilling and scary at the same time to see that that's how connected we are. So when we got finished with this young woman, she was able to transition and she was able to be at peace with herself. We called in relatives and whatnot that came and loved her and told her it's okay, this is a good thing, don't be afraid of it, and she went off. And it was amazing for me to be able to be in that circumstance and partake in that experience with those people, and to see my friend Alice come flying out. She flew out and landed on her tailbone. I mean, that's how fast she projected out. And if I hadn't seen it, I wouldn't have believed it. But there's so many things that we don't understand that we are capable of and can experience. It's, there's magic out here.
No, it's
you
called
think of someone and they call.
interference.
That's the basic stuff. You need something and it shows
magnetics.
up. All of a sudden there's more money in your bank account than should be there. I mean,
Oh yeah, that happens every week.
I
yeah.
needed a new car at one time, and my ex-husband called me, and we were both car people at that time. That was one of the connections we had. We loved cars. And he said, well, what are you thinking of buying? And at that time, finances were a little iffy for me. And I said, I'm not sure. He said, well, I have a new Jeep Cherokee. He said, it's green with a persimmon stripe and tan interior. And those are all my favorite colors. And I said, how did you end up with a car that was made for me? And he said, I don't know. Maybe it was made for you.
And her favorite colors. Matrix marketing department taking care of Diane. Boom, boom. Hey, Eli, good to see you, brother. I hope you're doing well.
He said, I would be willing to send it to you and you just take over paying from here. And I thought, we didn't have that kind of relationship, guys. We just didn't have that kind of relationship. He flatbed trucked it from D.C. to me in Santa Monica. Now, that was spirit-led all the way around because the car was absolutely my taste, my type, my everything. And it was financially at the place where I could handle it. And he paid for the trucking and everything. That was spirit-led.
That was parasite-led.
So when
Crystal Dawn says, rewards for the obedient. Exactly. Exactly.
he paid for the trucking and everything.
Paid for the trucking. And the guy's got a new a Jeep or whatever it was, her favorite colors. And on top of it, he's shipping it across the country and just wants the monthly payments. No down payment, no nothing, just the monthly payments. And he's so nice that he sends it across the country too. God, I think we got to find ourselves some friends like that, huh? How about someone just to pay the rent? How about that? That'd be nice.
That was spirit-led. So when we allow ourselves to be supported and loved and played with, we get that. And that's the point.
All right, played with.
Is to allow.
See, she even says played with. Here.
We get that. So when we allow ourselves to be supported and loved and played with, we get that.
Played with. Wow. That's a huge statement right there. I'm sorry, I'm going to rewind it again because that's huge.
He paid for the trucking and everything. That was spirit-led.
Spirit-led.
So when we allow ourselves to be supported and loved and played with, we get that. And that's the point.
I think I missed that first.
Is to allow ourselves to be in that position. To love ourselves enough to be in that position. Yes, ma'am.
What is it, how you have the ability to see these blockages and what it is that you do to help them in the right direction at that point?
I don't know how it is that I have it. Oh, what it's like. Okay. Well, when it originally started, it would be overwhelming because I would hear and see all kinds of stuff. And I thought I was becoming psychotic. But I have worked with it enough to temper it down and, So what it is I see your story inside of you. I see what the truth is about you that you're not telling yourself. I see the sadness. I see the pain. I see the joy. I see, the disappointment. I see all the things that have gotten in your way, that have hurt you or kept you stuck or not allowed you to be who you really are. Now, I do a lot of psychological work with that, talking it out, letting you feel it. There's inner child work. There's vibrational clearing to remove that and connect you to your high self. It just depends on what the person needs. Sometimes they just need to be reminded as to what the truth is about themselves, because a lot of us have taken on in childhood perceptions of what we thought our families were telling us about ourselves that aren't necessarily true. And we've operated on that operating system. Not good enough, not smart enough, not whatever enough kind of stuff. And my job is to break that, because that's never the truth of who we are. I try not to be intrusive with people. I don't read them unless I'm asked to. And I had to learn I don't want to see all of the pain and suffering. That's too overwhelming for me. If I see 40-some people's pain and suffering at one time, I'd lose my mind. So I have diffused focus. I don't laser in unless it's an appropriate thing to do.
All right, so that is going to wrap up the segment for today, the NDE commentary. I just want to say a couple things before we close out tonight's show. If you'd like to join us in the Discord server after the stream, feel free. Jimmy's going to pop up a link, and if not, you can also find that in the description tab as well. I'd like to thank Jimmy for his help tonight, and also say that I have 2 YouTube backup channels, an Odyssey account, a Twitch, a Twitter, an Instagram, all this stuff. These are just all alternative ways to stay in touch. Took a poll, I believe, couple streams back, and about 30% of you were not getting notifications, even if you had the YouTube bell selected to all. So that's a lot of people, and I'm sorry about that if that's continuing to occur, or if that's a regular thing that happens. I don't know why, but the best suggestion I can give is to make sure that the YouTube bell is set to all, and it's like totally filled in, and it's not selected to personalized or none. And if you're having trouble getting notifications, you can always try unsubscribing and then resubscribing. And the only other alternatives is usually about an hour before the show, I always will post on Twitter, Instagram, and in Discord. So those are the 3 other additional options where I'll make an announcement. Sometimes on the weekend, if I'm doing something Saturday, Sunday, I'll say, I'm shooting to do streams on Saturday, Sunday, maybe 4 o'clock this day, 7 o'clock the other day. And those times are always rough, but I'll try and at least give an estimate and update when possible. So if you'd like to join us, that'd be great. I also wanted to give a heads up to anyone interested in joining the Last Timers Club, or for already existing members. For level 2 and 3, we'll be having our monthly members live stream on Sunday, June 26th at 4 p.m. Eastern. So that's June 26th, 4 p.m. Eastern, a little over a week from now, 8 days from now. So hope to see you then. And there is a backlog for anyone who wishes to sign up. And again, anything that's extremely important in relation to the soul trap will always be available for free. But if you want some added content, a little more in-depth content each month, and feel free to join the Last Timers Club and check that out. I also have a Stream Elements, and with them, basically instead of super chats or super thanks, they take 3% versus YouTube taking 30%. And it's anything is always appreciated but never expected. Much love and blessings, and I will see you all again real soon. Actually, I'll see you probably tomorrow. So thank you so much, and see you in the Discord too in a few minutes.